Hi, and welcome to VFX Tutors. I'm Josh, and in this tutorial we're going to be continuing with our basic sort of lighting. In our first one we did a really simple sort of Rembrandt portrait setup with one key light and a backdrop. So we're going to continue with this. We're going to go through all these sort of portrait lighting setups, and hopefully they'll give you a good idea of just some really basic sort of lighting fundamentals. And these will really grow some really good foundations in lighting if that's something that you really want to get into. It's good to know these basics and sort of get an idea of how lights work in visual effects. So yeah, if you enjoyed these tutorials so far, hit that like button and subscribe for more like this. Cool. So in our previous one, I said about PureRef, and this is PureRef. It's great. Just means you can put your reference on top and it's always there. You don't have to keep clicking off, and you can minimize it down and set up exactly how you want. It's free. You can download it or donate. Anyway, so I'm just going to keep this down here to the left. And in our previous tutorial, we just went through some really basic sort of lighting. It was a single light with a backdrop. We recreated the Rembrandt sort of look with this portrait and this sort of David sculpture. So we went around with, we didn't go through them one by one, but I think I just went through it as, with them all anyway. So we sort of went through all this sort of softbox, and we didn't do it with a brolly, but we did change the sort of spread and the scale and the exposure to sort of recreate this and the different sort of how shadow fall off works. And the same with the strobe light, well, with the honeycomb, which is basically a strobe spotlight with very little spread, sharper shadows. And we actually didn't do the silver brolly because that adds a little bit more, it takes a little bit more of the color off, so we're just keeping it very simple. But you can see the sort of effect. We can push that with the color of the light as well. So this is probably going to be a very quick one. We're going to do the Rembrandt short, and it's pretty much the same as what we've done here, but the Rembrandt short is it's the sort of triangle of light you get on the face from one angle. We don't see it from this angle. And what I say about the triangle light, if you watch my cursor, you can sort of see the triangle of light. You see the shadow going across to the top of the nose, coming down across the corner of the lips, down past the neck. And you can see there's almost this triangle of shadow here. This is the sort of Rembrandt triangle of light. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to turn my show selection highlighting off. And I'm just going to rotate. I'm just going to roughly rotate this so he's kind of, I don't want to rotate him, but we kind of want to see this triangle of light. So we've got our previous light from our previous shot. You can keep this from the other one. We can just see what it looks like. There's no point us making a new light for this one because we've already done it. This is just a very quick sort of try to get this triangle of light. Cool, because we've got it rotated now. We don't have to move our light. So just get my perspective. And because we had because in the previous one we had it face on, you can see how the light is across the face here. So now it's sort of still across the face, but she's rotated as well. So we need to rotate that round as well. So if we look at our light, let's just hide our backdrop. So if you're just joining in on this one, I would look at the first tutorial. We'll go through setting up. It's just basic AI shaders. It's nothing special. So I'm just going to go to my top down actually. Hopefully this should be a really quick one. We're just going to try and get this triangle of light. Cool, so not quite getting it. So I'm just going to pull this off to the side. I'm in my top down view. And her face is there. So it's almost, if we look at this, it's almost face on. So our face is facing this way. Go with this and update our full scene. Nope, that's in top shape. We don't want that. We want the render camera. Cool. So we're still not quite getting it. And what we need to do is just play around with our settings. And even though we're trying to match this, obviously we're very much a different sort of subject here, but it's very similar in the ways of portrait. Cool, because you need to start sighting that. Now we can start seeing that we're getting this triangle of light here. It's not very distinguishable right now. Let's just go back to our perspective. So we're probably a little bit high for this one. How much the height changes, how the look of the light is as well. See how obviously the lower we are, the shadows are start going to pointing upwards, and there's going to be more downlit. So if we look at this, it's very face on. So we want to make sure that our light is pretty face on. So we're getting this triangle now. It's quite difficult because you don't really, his hair is much harder to sort of get it matching, so her hair's a bit smoother. But we want a bit more darkness over the cast of the face. So I'm going to bring this round. You can see how we're getting much darker here. You can sort of see the triangle. But maybe our shadows are a little bit too soft. And if you remember from the first one, do you know how we can change that? So we have got quite soft shadows, but under here is much more. It's still quite defined. So let's see what happens if we reduce our spread. Getting a much stronger light source. And if we look how our nose is, obviously they're not the same noses, not the same face shapes. We can see that the shadow is more coming down with the cheek, whereas this is sort of almost level with the nose, which would also suggest we need to go a little bit higher up. So not quite getting that triangle. I'm just going to have to pause it. Cool. So now we're getting that sort of, getting a much more defined look. We might be a little bit too far around to the left now because the shadows are like sort of almost encroaching in on the eyeball. So we've now got this sort of triangle shape here, so let's bring this round a little bit more, so just point it down towards it. We've still got probably a little bit further around to go. So even though we try and follow these diagrams, they're treated as like a starting point, because obviously that's the sort of diagram to get her shape and her setup, so it may not be the same. Cool, so it's quite hard to tell on the top because it's so overcast here. But I think we're pretty much being able to match these sort of lighting is pretty important, because it's very difficult to do. Obviously, like her face, if we look at her, she's got much sort of more pronounced cheeks and a more of a pronounced jaw, whereas obviously this guy here, he's a marble sculpture. He has no cheek, and almost this guy, it just looks like he has no jaw. But it's probably just also the lighting as well, because you can sort of see the light coming under here. And her jaw's much more refined, whereas here it's, on the model it's much more rounder. But we can sort of almost see that we are getting this sort of triangle. We got the light coming across it. You can sort of only just see it here. It's not very good. Probably not the best subject, but for this sort of shot, because it's obvious here, but then it kind of gets lost in the hair. So probably not best choice. But if we look at the eye, we can see we've got this shadow following the curve of the cheek. We're probably a little bit over, maybe. Let's bring this slightly over and let's see how much that changes it. Let's bring it over a little bit more, a little bit down. Cool. So now we're getting, it's a little bit further in. We're getting this highlight on the cheek up here. Even in obviously the eyes, this is just a standard AI shader. It's nothing special, so it's going to obviously react a little bit different. But we can sort of analyze a lot of the stuff on here. That's very similar, which is like looking at this sort of the brow of the eye, and we can sort of see on this one, obviously his nose is much sharper. We can reduce the amount on there, but we've got this sort of nose shadow pointing down into here and coming up and following around and slightly going over the eyeball, but also the cheek and the highlight there. So for this one, I think we pretty much got it on this one. It's maybe a little bit actually too far left, because now we're losing that shadow on the neck, so it's going to be very difficult to match it. But cool. So yeah, it's basically the same sort of setup. In fact, actually, completely forgot we have no backdrop, so this could change everything. So let's turn that back on. Sorry about that. And it's not changed it that much, but it's obviously much darker, lighter, sorry. And we've got more bounce. It's a little bit softer. Cool. So yeah, I know this is a super quick one, nothing fast. I just wanted to go through, and pretty much all these ones are very similar. That's the only different one. Then we'll go on to these different ones, which are kind of a little bit more interesting. We'll add more lights. Most of these are single light ones, but then we'll go on to more interesting sort of ones and more creative, adding more lights. So obviously we don't have all this equipment, but you can pretty much do it all with the CG lights, so I shouldn't worry about that. But yeah, these are going to be real quick lighting tutorials. We're just going to go through and do them as is. So I'm actually just going to play around with this one, get a little bit nicer, I think. It's a little bit darker than I would like it to be. So if we just go back to... So what I want to do is not go to my modeling toolkit. I'm just going to pause that. Just going to bring up my spread a bit so it's a bit lighter. It's quite soft going from under here. We've still got that sort of highlight. It's not as pronounced, so we can change that maybe to 15. Get a little bit more brightness in there. But we're keeping that soft edge. And I'm only bringing it up by small increments because it's very easy to overexpose it when you're using the exposure. So we could maybe even... I think that's all right. We've got it pretty close. So you can just about see, it's hard to tell with this hair, but you can definitely see it going down under the chin and the neck. It's not as pronounced as this. Let's see if we can get it. So I just want to try and get it better. So no, we can. But obviously it's not going to be the same, purely because it's just a different guy. Cool, so I'm just going to leave it as that. And yeah, we're pretty much done. It's probably way longer than I wanted it to be because we're basically just recreating the same one. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Don't forget this is all free to download, and if you get lost on this one, don't forget, watch the first one. We go through all the shaders. Not that it's complicated, it is just simple Arnold standard shaders, nothing special. And you can download the bust and the plinth and the backdrop and have some fun with it. There's no rules really to lighting, you just make it whatever you fill really looks nice. But with this sort of guide, it helps you start in the right place. Cool, so yeah, like I said, if you enjoyed this tutorial, hit that like button and subscribe for more like this. Thank you.